Hi. Hello, everyone. So happy to have you guys here. I'm going to go ahead and bring our executive producer for Coming Home Again, Dawn Young, up to the stage. Dawn, whenever you're ready, turn on that camera. Dawn, hello.
Hi, Christina.
To have you here.
It's great to be here.
Oh my gosh. So what do you think of our first of all, what do you think of our virtual film festival world?
It's what it is. It's 2020, right? So
Isn't it crazy? Have you seen like a platform like this? Like I have never seen like a festival platform like this. And so, I was just like, this is so cool.
yeah, it seems like everybody's moving towards creating a virtual space where people can connect
Yep.
and meet up and create community and replicate what festivals do well, right?
Yep, exactly. And so Dawn, before we go ahead and get started, can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. So it's great to be here, Christina, with you and the audience. I'm Don Young. I produce Coming Home Again, and I also work for the Center for Asian American Media, CAM. So we predominantly fund and produce and support documentaries for PBS, but periodically we experiment. And Coming Home Again was a very low budget, project that we were able to mount together 2 years ago at this point, right? The production was a little over 2 years ago.
So Dawn, could you speak a little bit about CAM? Because I know that you also run the CAM Film Festival every year.
Mm-hmm.
Tell everybody about CAM and what it was like this year, the 2020 version.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this year has been, for CAM, like everybody else, unlike any other year, right? So when I was actually in New York when the first cases of COVID struck, and I was sort of at that time had a sense that we weren't going to have a festival, right? So the first thing that happened when I came back that first week of March was just had indicated there's no way this is, certainly couldn't predict the scope and difficulties of what this year has become. But I think having tracked what was happening in Europe and Asia, just had a feeling that we weren't going to be able to get together in May like we usually want to, right? And then in rapid succession over the next 2 or 3 weeks, I think it started with South by Southwest, them making the announcement. Actually, one of our filmmakers was in Austin at the time that they shut down the festival. So the poor filmmaker was there, because they shut it down like a day or two before the festival was going to start, right? So two of our filmmakers were there. Their film was going to be in competition, and they had to go home.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and I think that was sort of like an early signal of how quickly it was going to change. So we had a lot of programming that was intended in May. We produced this 5-part PBS series that was a comprehensive history show, and we had probably about 50 programs, in-person events around the country that in rapid succession had to be converted to digital screenings, right? And that's like everybody else. Our event was going to be in May. All of our work had to be adjusted, and then quickly we jumped on Zoom and different platforms and did a lot of digital events. And certainly for the Asian American community, because it was such a especially difficult year, a lot of anti-Asian racism. I think a lot of our programs and events became an outlet in May. And we've tried to pivot like you have. You try to create a space. I don't know that it replicates what a film festival does best, but I think it builds a virtual community, and it gives audiences an outlet and an opportunity to engage. It's a different experience. I think it's much more maybe therapeutic and and it's fits within a workday. So but it's I think for all of us, what will an in-person experience versus a digital experience, I think there's a lot of good learnings and good opportunities. And we're trying to retain a lot of this year in terms of being able to serve audiences differently.
Yeah, you know what? Given that, what do you think CAM is going to look like in May? Because May is it's 5 months away.
Yeah.
It's going to be here before you know it. It's so crazy to think about, but I mean, we're already like at the end of this year. This year's like almost
Yeah.
over.
Even though, fortunately, some good vaccines, some very effective vaccines are expected. We do not expect by May that you know being able to do a lot of in-person screenings will be possible, right? So we're planning that there will be some socially distanced programming, but the reality is we're not going to fly people in. We are not planning at the moment to secure a lot of in-person venues because May, I think for a lot of certainly younger folks and a lot of our audience tends to be, uh, people between 20s and 40s. We don't expect that the vaccine will be fully available to those ages by then.
So part of on why I wanted to invite you to the festival also is because I wanted you to check out this platform because, like I think that it absolutely does not take the place of like in-person film festivals, but it provides a really cool space to like connect with filmmakers and connect with the audience. Just given the times that we're in right now,
Mhm.
and it was so crazy because the reason why and I think there's a few platforms out there, but the way that I found out about this particular platform was on LinkedIn for like my heading or like my job title. I have that I'm a programmer for the Silicon Valley International Film Festival. I'm the director and the founder. And so the CEO of Filmocracy, I think he was just, and this is a startup, they launched, I want to say in March of this year.
Mhm.
And, with any startup, you wear multiple hats and you try to, recruit people, you try to, you do your own marketing. So I think he just did like a search on LinkedIn and then he just messaged me and he was just like, hey, given the times that we're in right now, you're probably thinking about going virtual. Do you want to have a meeting with me and so I can give you a demo of what
Mhm.
our platform looks like? So I said, yeah, sure, why not? And it's crazy because I was thinking about canceling as well my festival for this year,
Mhm.
largely because I moved. Dawn, surprise, I'm in New Jersey now. But like I moved just because, of everything that was happening. I had just had a baby and all the daycares were closed.
Yeah.
And it was insane. And I was just like, wow, I really need help. And so my mom was living in New Jersey. My mom could have lived in Montana and I would have moved to Montana. It's like, the point is I just needed help. And so I ended up moving out here because my mom was living out here. And after I got a demo of this platform, I was like, I was blown away. I was like, wow, this is really cool. Like, I really feel like connected and I feel like I'm in this like space where I can really like network with people. And
Mhm.
so there was the San Diego International Film Festival was coming up. And so he got me a pass to that film festival. I went and I checked it out and I was like, wow, this is awesome, And so that's how I just reached out to him and that's how I decided to implement this, this platform for my festival. And it was so easy, they're still getting started. I know that a whole bunch of festivals like reached out to him afterwards after, they've been, I think they did AFM, they did American Film Market on this platform.
Oh, cool.
And yeah. And so it's just like, it's so amazing to me how we as filmmakers, it's like we have to be kind of agile and we have to be kind of like, we have to change with the times, right? Depending on what happens. Like, I feel like that's the only way we really survive. It's like we have to kind of adapt and evolve depending on what's happening. But I want you to speak a little bit more about your experience with coming home again, largely because like I'm curious too. And so for those of you who don't know, so we are recording this session as well. So for the people who are listening now, thank you. And for our audience who will be listening to this recording later, I met Dawn because I was actually in the film. I played the sister character, and what was really crazy was I filmed this when I was 3 months postpartum with my first child. And it was insane. And Dawn, I am pretty sure I told you this, but I don't know how much of this you knew, beforehand. But the casting director's assistant, Lisa, she's also in the movie too. She played the tattoo girl at at the restaurant. But she was the casting assistant, and she found my Crazy Rich Asians audition on YouTube. And
Oh, is that right?
she,
I didn't know that specifically. Yeah.
yeah. So I'm sure a lot of people know, or maybe they don't, but Crazy Rich Asians, before, it was released in theaters, when they were gearing up, for marketing, their marketing team had the idea, oh, and this is before they filmed and stuff. But they were like, oh, we should generate buzz on the film by having an open audition. So actors could potentially upload their auditions onto YouTube, and we'll we may cast them, for a role in the movie. So I uploaded my audition onto YouTube, and I was so disappointed because, when the movie actually went into production and when it was finished, there was nobody that got cast from those video auditions. So it was purely to generate buzz, which is so disappointing as an actor, because you're really putting yourself out there in the space, and the fact that they didn't even take it seriously or didn't even consider you is just kind of insulting, right? And so anyway, I decided to just leave it up because I was like, to be honest, I forgot about it. And then it was just so crazy that I get this email saying that this girl saw my audition, and she had forwarded my information to the casting director, Heidi. Heidi Levitt was the casting director on this project. And they were just like, hey, so Don's going to be at this hotel in Nob Hill. He's taking meetings right now. Can you be there in an hour? And I was like, I had just given birth, so I was at home on maternity leave with my baby, and my husband was also on paternity leave. And so I was like, hey, I could potentially get cast for something. Do you mind watching the baby while I jump in an Uber and go to the hotel? And then so I just jumped in an Uber. I went to the hotel. I met Wayne. We chatted about the project, and Justin was there. He took a couple pictures. You were there too. I remember I saw you outside of that hotel, Dawn.
Yeah. We met briefly. Yeah.
Yeah. And then before I knew it, I was cast for the project. So that's kind of how my relationship with that happened. But Dawn, I'm curious to hear how you got connected with Wayne and how you got connected with the project.
Sure. So we this is the second project we've done with Wayne. We did another low budget feature with him years ago, The Princess of Nebraska. And my boss, Stephen Gong, had given Wayne his first grant on Chan is Missing way back in the day. So when Stephen worked at the National Endowment for the Arts, they supported that film, which ended up becoming an important landmark independent feature film. It inspired a lot of, it was really part of that American independent film wave back in the 80s. It got a great, theatrical release. I think for a small, that film sort of mythically was made for $30,000, and then it went on to get, big acclaim and did a very nice theatrical release. And then now has been actually, it's part of the National Film Registry, right? It's that important of a film. So we had worked with Wayne on a previous project, but so initially Coming Home Again was actually meant to be a virtual reality film based on Chan is Missing, but the protagonist from the film passed away, Wood Moy. He was 99. So Wayne scrapped that idea, and then he decided he wanted to adapt the short story or the short essay that Cheng Wei Li, his first published story in the New Yorker back in the 90s. And that's how it happened. As the film happened. It's a very low budget film. We really kind of threw it together. I think in many ways, when Wayne first envisioned it, it was almost like a workshop, like an actor's workshop. The scenes were mapped out, but not scripted. I
Yeah.
think he really, really encouraged the actors to bring their own sort of sensibilities and personal story to it. We shot in, basically two waves. The first shoot was for about 9 days, right? And I think of which you were probably on set, maybe 4 days, something like
Yep.
that, right?
Yep.
And then we went back and we filmed again. I think two really short shoots. A lot of the dialogue came later on in the process. And then you also did some VO work in our office.
Yep.
So it's a very scrappy, very uh, um, almost like a community style production. Um,
Yep.
but the films, although very modestly budgeted, very modest production, has gotten some really nice reviews. And I think, it has become almost this interesting little COVID symbolic film,
Yep.
which was unexpected as we launched it. So,
Yeah. So another question I had for you was given COVID, because, as soon as, like Coming Home Again had premiered at TIFF last year, and it was just starting to start its festival run. It showed at Busan. And oh my gosh, for those of you who don't know, it was at Busan while our lead actor, Jackie, was out there. She plays the mother character. She actually gave birth to her second son out in Korea. So how crazy.
that was more stressful than making the film.
How crazy was that?
That was nuts. So, yeah.
And so, I saw that the film, it did get picked up by a distributor, outside producers, which was amazing. So can you kind of speak to what that experience was like as you were just starting to, do the festival run with this film, COVID happening, and what that was like?
Well, yeah, and there was, I think, so the film premiered at Toronto 2019, last September, and then a few weeks later went to Busan and had a big screening there. And then we had always known that we were going to distribute in 2020, but we did, I think as everybody did, put the brakes on at the early part of this year because we didn't know, right? Nobody knew how, I think particularly for these smaller films, how they would be launched this year.
Yep.
Initially, we were planning to release the film around Mother's Day, which would have made sense, right? But then once COVID struck, everybody, businesses just, effectively shut down. I think a lot of the early films really suffered in terms of visibility because, if first of all, nobody was going to theaters, but second of all, just like festivals, it took a while for distributors, press, filmmakers to figure out a new way of working. So in some ways, the film really benefited. Well, not in some ways, it really benefited not only because of the COVID kind of resonance that the film has, but by the time we launched it in October, major reviewers were accepting digital releases as reviewable, right? While earlier on, if a film wasn't being released in a theater, they just weren't going to review it, right? So I think that change happened, and then additionally, a pretty robust number of the small independent theaters who were only releasing in their theaters started doing digital releases, right? And I think that was really helpful. It's no secret that pushing out an independent film, it's just become harder and harder as a theatrical film. But we really did benefit with some, from Deadline to the New York Times to LA Times, the rap we got.
And like the IndieWire article,
candidly, surprisingly positive.
It was amazing. Like the IndieWire article,
all of them were really, the breadth of coverage was stronger than a lot of big budget projects have gotten, right? So we were very, obviously, I think the film was meaningful. Clearly also Wayne is such a distinguished, respected filmmaker. So I think it just, timing is often everything. And, we were proud of the film, but I think the timing and what the film symbolized was important too.
So have you yourself, I know you were a producer on this particular project, but do you yourself actually, ever direct or write or, create films in that space?
I've directed, a few documentaries, but really the majority of my career has been about funding and producing films. So
Funding and producing films.
and predominantly documentaries, yes.
So what are the documentaries that you enjoy creating and making?
Well, it's all aligned with CAM, Asian American work, right? So we had a big 5-hour history series in May that got a lot of press, a lot of viewers. We did a performance program before COVID struck. We had a concert show with Lea Salonga, the Tony Award winning singer. She did a Whole New World for Aladdin, and yeah. So we produced a show with her at the Sydney Opera House in November of last year.
Yeah.
Just as all the big fires were starting in Australia. So we do a mix of projects.
So what has been your favorite project that you've worked on throughout your entire career so far, and why was it your favorite?
Well, I don't know about favorite. I think the series that we did in May was important because it came at a time when there was a lot of, a lot of fear in the Asian American community, a lot of, desire to assert a different kind of story in the context of American history. So that's a show that, we spent 8 years on. I'm proud of that. Yeah. I'm proud of coming home again. I think it's okay to say we always thought we had a nice little film, but I was surprised. I think all of us on the film were really pleasantly surprised with the coverage and attention it received. Right.
So I have a question. So what are the projects that you are working on next? Because I know that right now with COVID and with, quarantine and staying home, what are the type of projects like in the pipeline for you guys? I'm just so curious. And is there, to see if there's like an opportunity for, people to get involved and, work with you?
Well, I think because this year it's been such a busy year programmatically, I think the next year will be a lot about developing a new slate of work. We are in the early stages of doing a series on Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders in film and TV, right? So there's just so much that's happened the last 4 or 5 years that it'll, we look forward to telling that history, but giving a more contemporary lens and way in. But that's probably the main project we're developing. I think we're just looking forward to getting back to doing in-person events and thinking through what's next.
So really quick, I wanted to open up the questions to the audience, and if they have any questions, feel free to type it in the Q&A section, and I will bring you up to the stage to have a conversation with us. And if there are no takers to the Q&As, then I will continue with the questions that I had prepared. Especially because, Don, you're a busy man, and so I really appreciate you taking the time to come to our festival and to speak on coming home again and to just spend time with us.
I'm happy to. Yeah. I don't think I've ever done a Q&A with somebody who's both a performer in the film and a festival director at the same time.
I don't think there's very many of me out there.
I don't think it's that common.
But you know what, Don? It's so awesome because now I have this platform where I can showcase the films that I make, and it's great. It's so great. And the thing is, because I work, in tech during the day, like that's like my day job, because I'm still working at Salesforce. I ended up switching teams. I used to be with the enterprise sales team, and then my executive was based out of San Francisco, and she is the type of person that she needs somebody locally. And so I ended up interviewing for a position on the East Coast. And so my new executive, I now work in the solutions engineering world. And my new executive is based out of Virginia, and she's remote, which is perfect because that allows me to work remotely. So I get to work remotely. I'm a remote worker now, you know, with or without COVID, even when this.
I think that's, yeah, I think that's going to be a permanent part of a lot of us, right? So it's,
yeah, it's interesting to see how everyone's kind of adapted to the whole, like, you know, working remotely, like, you know, I guess work culture, because I feel like that's definitely something that people, you know, it's like buildings are really expensive. Being in a building is really expensive. And I think they're kind of like reassessing, like, is this really necessary? Like, how many buildings are necessary, you know?
especially where you worked, Salesforce, right?
Yes.
So,
Oh my gosh,
yes,
the tallest building in San Francisco.
might
So,
be on the West Coast, right?
yep.
So, yeah.
So we do have a question.
Yeah, I see there's a few questions. Yeah.
Awesome.
So
I'm going to go ahead and bring
first,
Amber to the audience.
okay,
We'll
cool.
bring her up to the stage. Come on up, Amber.
Hi, I'm on.
Hello, Amber.
Hello.
Welcome.
My question, I think, actually has some in common with Emily's question as well. But I was wondering if you could talk kind of generally about things that you consider when producing a film, or how you know that it's a good project for you.
Sure. I can answer both of those questions sort of simultaneously. Well, I think certainly when producing a film, you want to make sure it's a story and a filmmaker who you get excited about, right? Like that you really believe that it's a story that's meaningful, right? In terms of how I assess it, I think, you know, as a producer, I believe my job is to do whatever's necessary so the filmmaker can execute their vision, right? Creatively, help raise the funds, and really create an environment whereby, regardless of the budget and what's happening, that they can execute. And really, you know, I think for Wayne, you know, for example, with Coming Home Again, it entailed everything. So the house the film happened at was my grandmother's my grandmother's home. You know, we had to do things like schedule the shoots around Jackie's performances. She was in a theater play in LA, right? So that has to be scheduled, you know, so she didn't fake being tired and sick. She was tired and sick when she came on set. You know, figuring out the combination of crew and cast and supporting them. You know, and then a lot of the sort of pedantic work of managing the budget. It was even though a low budget film, it was a DGA and Screen Actors Guild compliant, right? So we actually had SAG show up on set, and, you know, I felt good that even though it was a small production, that everything was up and compliant, and we you know, it's important, and even though it was a tiny budget, it was less than $100,000 production budget, everybody got paid, right? And I think, you know, there weren't any volunteers, you know, including the PAs. Everybody got at least minimum wage, and, you know, those aren't maybe things that necessarily matter in the launch of the film, but for me, that's important, right? And then, you know, you just want to, as a producer, think through what you can bring to a project. Like, what are the best skills? You know, for me and for Cam, it's as important that the community we create behind the scenes is like as good as the film. So, you know, a lot of those folks, I think it was an interesting combination of people who, I think all the actors have acted quite a bit, but actually on the production side, you had someone like Wayne, who's really respected, Justin, Jackie, Christina, all of them were working professionals, but a lot of our crew hadn't done it before, right?
Wow.
From set decoration to, most of them were like aspiring professionals, I guess is the way to put it, right? So we you know, that was important to figure out that combination of where you know, Wayne really set the tone. Wayne didn't treat anybody differently,
Nope.
right? It was fun and invigorating for him to not be in a space where it was just a professional looking out to undercut a different professional.
Yep.
I mean, he said on Hollywood films, it's not necessarily more money doesn't mean you're more creative. Sometimes Hollywood's solution is you pay to create problems and you pay to fix problems. And he's like, that doesn't always result in a better project, right? So, you know, it's a personal decision. And I think producing is like thinking through what you want to really spend your time and life on for that period of time. I mean, you know, I think it's a powerful thing. You know, a lot of us only spent 2.5 weeks together, right? We had a very short pre-production, but I've kept in touch with everybody since the production. You know, I think it becomes, if it's done well, it becomes a bit of a little professional family for a very short period of time.
Great bonding experience for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's the kind of space that I try to create on a shoot. So
thank you, Amber, for your question.
Yeah. Good to meet you.
So I actually had a question that I wanted to ask. How did you get the actors, you know, for the project? Because as you mentioned, you know,
it was through Heidi. Yeah. So we knew we wanted Justin, right? So Justin
Chon, for everybody who.
Yeah, Justin Chon, the star, was always the first person we had wanted, because Wayne specifically wanted somebody who not only, I think, persona, you know, was the right age and the right look for the actor, but he was really interested to create the film with somebody who really wanted to create the film, right? So Justin, we had known he had done Gook, you know, a year earlier by the time our film came out. That's right. It came out Sundance earlier that year. And then I was aware that he was developing his next film, Miss Purple.
Yep.
And it turned, or not developing, he had shot Miss Purple right before he filmed with us. And I didn't find this out until after we launched the film. He brought his editor up to the room we rented in San Francisco. So he was shooting with us during the day and editing Miss Purple at night in his hotel room. So efficient. And that's Justin. Justin's amazing. So yeah, he's great.
So you guys knew that you had wanted to work with Justin, or was it Wayne?
Yes, Justin.
Was it Wayne that said he wanted
to? Wayne and I knew. We did not ever consider any other actor. There was no other person we solicited. So Justin, I reached out to Justin directly because he'd come to our festival. The rest, you know, was through Heidi Levitt. Yeah, Heidi obviously, you know, is how you got brought onto the film. So everybody else, Jackie Chung, the mom, I think all of the other actors came in through Heidi, who's a very distinguished casting agent, right? So,
how did you guys get connected with Heidi?
Heidi had cast Joy Luck Club for Wayne. So they you know, Wayne and Heidi have known each other for, I mean, what, 25 years?
Oh my God.
25 plus years at this point. Yeah.
So with Jackie, I think did Wayne say that he had seen Jackie's theater show? Did he see her in the theater show? Or
No, he had heard of it, but I do not think that he saw her play at Berkeley Rep. She's mostly done theater, but I think he had read about it, but I don't believe he saw it in person.
Okay, got it. Man, that's incredible, because like for me as an actor, like that's incredible to me that timing is everything, right? You have to be at the right place at the right time. But I mean, a lot of the control really is in these casting directors, right? Establishing relationships with these casting directors, because, you know, your production hired Heidi to cast the project. And when you met with her, what did you tell her about the other characters, like the mother character and my character? Like, were you like, look for somebody? Because it's like, that's something that I don't think a lot of people like are on the inside with. Like, so how did that work? Like, what did you tell her? Because I know for me, for my projects, my little independent film projects, I just cast it myself, you know, but what really,
Mhm.
what is that process like working with the casting director?
Well, Wayne and Heidi have I don't know how many films they've done together. They've probably at least done 5 or 6, right? So certainly both the, they're very comfortable collaborating, and I think Heidi has a pretty good sense of how to work with Wayne and the kinds of performers that Wayne's looking for. She had read the short story. I think predominantly is actually what she had read. I don't think she had read much of the writing that Chang Ray and Wayne put together. And I think she just really tried to canvas different networks, find I mean, I think your role, there's more actresses who might have been able to perform your role, but I think actually the rest, the mom, the father, because they're basically Korean speaking leads who have to be able to play two different
Yeah.
ages. I think we were pretty certain early on that it's not like there was going to be a huge, sort of roster of possibilities, but rather what were the unique ways that Heidi could, reach out to different networks and try to find people, right? So John Lee, who plays the father, is not an actor. He's a professor uh, uh, at UC Berkeley. So, they really had to be creative about, I think they located him through a web search. That wasn't
Man, I think
like he didn't respond to any casting
that is
calls.
so
So,
funny. I totally think that was the casting assistant, Lisa, right? That's where she kind of came into
yeah,
play. She was
yeah,
reaching actors through YouTube videos and website searches, and that's just so incredible to me. So, Don,
yeah.
I have a question for you. What, in your opinion, makes a good producer on an independent project and on a bigger project? Like, how can a project, like, how can a good producer make a difference on a project?
I mean, on a lower budget, mostly I've done big budget documentaries, and I've done lower budget features, and I've done lower budget documentaries. I think on a low budget feature, certainly somebody who is resourceful and really make sure that the filmmaker could be creative, but also that the crew and cast feel very appreciated, and taken care of, because they're not going to be compensated well, and they're not going to be like given any kinds of luxuries on set. I think on a big budget piece, I think it is really, you have to have experience in the business world. And then you have to be aware of the legalities so you protect the project and the creative team, right?
So, Don, do you have any tips for people, for filmmakers, for us on if we want to get our project seen, whether that be, submitting to different film festivals, like, do you have any tips on how do we get our film distributed? Like, what are the places where we should go? Like, what are the things that we need to do? What are those steps?
Well, I think to get scripts and creative work looked at more and more, it's going through talent agencies, right? I think it's really hard to get funding or projects without representatives, which is very problematic, but I think that's frankly the nature of
Mhm.
it. You need to be able to raise funds either through a network of investors that or through a producer or executive producer who's going to support the
Yep.
project. And then I think to get seen, it's really hard to work without a respected distributor. It's just, I think from setting up streaming deals, there used to be probably 10 years ago more possibilities of self-distributing. I think it's incredibly difficult to do that now.
So, who are some of the respected distributors, in your opinion, that you've heard about, that you've worked with directly?
Well, sales agents, I mean, they're all listed in festivals. Just look up who's representing at the major festivals, right? You're going to see really clearly. Everybody's obviously targeting the big ones, the focus features. The A24s obviously had incredible taste lately. And then, you know, a lot of indies have to go towards sales agents, right? So we chose to go with a smaller distribution company outside of
Mhm.
pictures. They were, you know, I think didn't have a lot of upfront funding for the film, but, you know, very scrappy, and I think really reflected the essence of the
Yep.
film. So, you know, and have been very, I think, very effective at the launch, the initial launch, and we'll see what's possible with you know, whether we get a TV or streaming deal. So that's still to come.
So how did you get that deal with Outsider Pictures? How did that happen?
Well, that was through Heidi. Heidi
That's
Levitt.
amazing. So
Yeah,
having a
but it's not really a deal. You know, it's a very, he's got a very small, um, small
yep.
outfit. Very good taste. I mean, we liked his taste, but you know, there's no guarantees when you go with a smaller distributor that they're necessarily going to, you know, typically the size of the distributor will likely reflect the size of your deal. So that's the reality of it, right? So that's their
So
calculation.
who are some streaming? So right now, the picture, you're still open to getting a streaming deal locked down.
We hope, yeah, we hope we get a TV and a streaming deal. That's the hope. So,
So what are the steps that you would need to take in order to get a TV and streaming deal?
well, that's all up to the sales
That's up to
agent,
the
right?
sales agent.
So the distributor, yeah, yeah, and that's still to be determined. We're not sure what's going to.
So my final question that I have for you is, what's next for Coming Home Again, and what are you guys doing right now with Coming Home Again? Because you know, I think a lot of
Mhm.
people think, oh yeah, Coming Home Again, you know, it's gone through some film festivals, you know, it got this, you know, like small distribution deal. Like, is that it? Like what are the next steps? Like, what are you guys working on?
So yeah, Outsider Pictures, they're trying to get a TV deal. So it's all still to be determined. The hope is it's made available either through cable or like a stream, you know, Amazon, Apple, or Netflix. We'll see. I mean, it's really hard. I think um, with the pandemic, a lot of us thought that all of them were going to want a lot
Streaming?
more independent
Yeah.
features. Yeah, but it doesn't seem like a lot of independent films are getting picked up. So we don't know. We honestly are not sure. You know, maybe the film can go to like the Criterion Collection or something like that, but we don't know. I mean, I think there's been a whole backlog of a year. You know, the pandemic has not made smaller films more
Mm.
visible, right? So I think, you know, maybe by next, studios are already shooting again. Where Hollywood's been affected is distribution, but they keep shooting, so it doesn't appear like there's as much a gap. So we don't know. I mean, we're not sure. You know, candidly, we don't think the film's going to get a big platform, but we'll, you know, hopefully it will be made readily available. But it's just hard to tell at this point. So
Great. So if there are no other questions, I am going to say thank you so much, Dawn, for spending your evening with us. You know, I guess it's your afternoon in California.
it's our early
Early
afternoon. So
afternoon.
yeah, it's still sunny here.
And you know, I loved just being a part of this movie. I learned so much. And the best part was just, it was so unexpected. You know, I was on maternity leave. I was 3 months postpartum. I was pumping on set. You know, you were wonderful. I was like, Dawn, I need a pump right now. And, you know, you found me a room and, you know, we were able to make that happen. So I really appreciate that. Um, I guess the last thing that I want to ask you, just because I have you on the line, how did you guys decide to go with me? Because I do know that it must have been really competitive, you know, and I'm so thankful, you know, for you guys for having chosen me. But you know, because I have you here on the line, like, how did that happen? Like, how did you guys choose me out of all of the other actresses that you guys could have chosen?
I think it was a combination. I think Wayne and Heidi were intrigued of your day job, so to speak, right? That you could speak with that kind of San Francisco tech energy, right? I think that was an important part of the role, right? As well as, you know, I mean, you were the right age and you look like you and Justin
Like
looked
siblings?
you look like siblings, right? And I think that was important, right? So, and I think Wayne was interested in somebody who didn't have a lot of like, that you could just, I don't, Wayne is very intuitive. So I think he felt that there was, a chance that you would bring something to the role that maybe other actors, I mean, it's not like this role. There's nobody who makes a career of being like an Asian American professional sibling, right? Like that's not something that's common. But I think maybe the way to answer is Wayne just follows his gut in terms of whether he feels like the person, both how they look and what you can suss out of their resume, just feels like the right starting point, as opposed to the roles that one's played. Right.
That's great to know, because that's something that I didn't
Yeah.
know. And I've always wanted to know. And now I know, because I got you on the line and I got to ask that question.
Yeah. That's it. I think he has a gut feeling about what someone's going to bring to a role. Maybe that's the way to put it. Right. So.
Wonderful. Well, Dawn, thank you so much again for just
it's fun to be here, Christina.
Answers. Yeah. And again, in the future, if you want to, like host cam on a virtual platform, let me know. I will connect you with Paul, who's like the CEO of this, and feel free to like explore. It's like you can go to the on-demand building. You can see all of our films, throughout the duration of the festival. You can see it on demand. And then there's like our networking lounge. If you want to go hang out in there, Dawn, maybe somebody's, wants to like chat it up with you. Our networking lounge is it's a yacht. It's a yacht. And so, you just click in there and you just sit down. And as soon as you sit down at the same table and start your video, then a video conferencing tool just kind of pops up, which is really awesome. And then the speed networking. Oh. Dawn, if you want to check out our speed networking, it's going to be at 4:30 Pacific time. Feel free to just like sit on the side. We're going to have a live stream from one of my tables that you can play. You could just like, go in and out, just check it out and see what it's like. But it's going to be a whole bunch of filmmakers pitching, like doing their pitch to tech professionals. And it's so crazy because I'm an executive assistant for my day job. And so I actually invited a lot of my past bosses, and they're like executives. They're like, Hughes Mayrath, he's going to be there today. He's like a C-level executive at like a tech company, so it's like, it's great, like that's how we have these connections. And so cool. Yeah, I look forward for, to have you there, like checking it out. And I hope to see you around for the rest of the festival. And for everybody who, attended our Q&A, thank you so much for attending. And we will, Dawn, I'll go ahead and I'll send you this recording just so you have it. You're welcome. Christina. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Take care.